Hey everybody, we're back for the next episode of Vikings Uncovered with me, the RabbitDad. Follow me on Twitter X at FFRabbitDad. I like doing fantasy football content. I like just talking about Vikings. I like just talking about whatever. But you don't know that, so let's just jive right into the games. Let's start with last week's recap. Vikings went to 4-0. Come on. We're excited about this. Sure, it was almost a monumental collapse. We won 31-29 after leading 28-0. But hey, a little bit of adversity is something that we needed to see. The Vikings needed to feel that. They needed to feel that pressure. They needed to know that we're not just going to steamroll everybody. That a team like the Packers can host us and make us all really, really nervous. I mean, I'm pretty sure my wife wanted to throw a chair through a window last week. I can't blame her. But yeah, that second half collapse, that adversity, that threat of letting it all slip away after that big of a start, it's going to help build the fire and fuel the flames for the team going forward. They're going to know that they can't just rely on getting ahead and just coasting. They need to maintain, they need to fight, they need to forage for all the yards and all the points they can get. And then we come back to the positional depth like I've been talking about every week. It's been so key, especially these last couple of weeks, without having Ivan Pace Jr. back there. Kamu Grugier-Hill has been unbelievable in his time playing out on the field with Pace gone. I mean, he needs to be on the field every single game. He's not going to be as much probably this week and maybe in the upcoming weeks, but he's earned himself a role, plain and simple. But yeah, like I said, like I was alluding to, Pace has been taken off the injury report. In fact, the only player not on the injury or that is on the injury report for the Vikings this week is TJ Hawkinson, whose window opened up. They opened up his window to come back. So that means he'll be back by, I want to say it's like November 3rd or 4th, something like that's the end of the window. So they have to activate him before then. Otherwise, he goes back on IR and he's out for the season. So like I had been saying earlier in the season, Hawkinson, I didn't expect him to be back before October. We're in October. He's not back. I was expecting closer to Halloween. Like maybe he'd be a trick or treat for us, in that week 7-8 game around there, around the end of the month. But yeah, so Hawkinson's coming back. And one more thing I want to touch on now, as we're going into the week 5 matchup. Sorry, Vikings are playing in Jolly London, where they are 3-0 lifetime in London. 2013 they beat Pittsburgh by 13. 2017 they beat Cleveland by 17. 2022 they beat the Saints by 3. 3-0 across the pond. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. The defense, like I was saying before, the positional depth and the disruption of the quarterback is huge reasons why they've won every single week. Jordan Love looked like less than last week. He started out that first half of the game, he was a wreck. The whole game, he was not fully pushing off with that left leg. And I said that he was going to be limited, and he was very limited. And the fact that he didn't get sacked more is just lucky. He's had a couple times where he threw up some just wonky passes. But that's going to be one of the key focal points every week for the defense. If they can disrupt the quarterback, those players get around and are feigning and playing multiple positions, like seeing Harrison Smith come all the way up to the edge and blitz, or hanging out in the back. He can do that. Metellus does that. Bynum can do a lot of that. Cashman, there's a number of guys who are multifaceted and versatile to be able to do different things on the field. That's going to be another key for the Vikings defense all season long. We've seen it. We're going to continue to see it. But yeah, like I said, last week, only 1 sack for the defense. They did knock down 12 passes. 12 passes were defended, which is crazy. I think 3 there's a number of players who had more than one, but 3 interceptions, 3 tackles for losses. The quarterback got hit 10 times. They hit Love 10 times last week. Only one of them resulted in a sack, but he got extra beat up. I mean, he didn't get super beat up. There was one time where it looked like maybe he was possibly going to be like, re-aggravation. Not something we like to see, but anywho, the Vikings defense is the bee's knees. Absolute bee's knees. So let's move on to some player highlights from last week. Like I said, Pace is coming back now. We're going to see him back in action. Grugier Hill had his interception in back-to-back games now. Metellus, Harrison Smith, Cashman, Bynum, all guys who played, all guys who played 90% or more of the snaps on the defense. Cashman had 11 tackles. Smith had 5 tackles and a pass defended. Same for Metellus. And it's not just about getting the tackles and the pass. It's being out there. It's disrupting and, causing the opposing offense to have to make different decisions. Like, you're not going to throw the ball to your wide out on the left if he's got Metellus and Bynum over the top of him, or Byron Murphy, who also had an interception. He was over 92% of the snap count too. He's been great. The whole secondary, just especially those 3 guys on the ends, on the outsides. Murphy, Griffin, and Stephon Gilmore, just locking it down. Keeping the players, to the receivers, from getting looks, getting targets, which is part of the reason we saw so many passes to the middle last week, like to the tight end, Tucker Kraft. I said he's the better tight end in Green Bay. I'm just saying it. I said it. I'm saying it again. But yeah, it's locking down the passing options for opposing quarterbacks has been huge. There's nothing really at this point. You really can't say anything bad about the Vikings defense other than the second half of last week's game. But I'll say it again: they needed that. It needed to be shown that they are not infallible, that they can get beat, and we almost did. And that was a wake up call for them. And they needed it. And then that one sack. Let's just really quick. Patrick Jones had his 5th sack of the season last week. Good on him. Keep it up, buddy. Like to see you just finish out with like 17 sacks. Just go ahead. Have a sack every week. 17, 18 sacks works for me. Offensive side of the ball. That getting up really early, just like we've done pretty much every week, is one of the keys to victory. I mean, you could say that about lots of things, but it was very crucial last week. You scored 28 points ahead of the other team getting on the board even once, and it just makes it easier. Touch on that adversity again. The offense realized that the offense struggled in the second half as well. Not moving the ball well, had an interception, that muffed punt, which as soon as I saw Naylor reach up for that, I'm like, oh, you stupid son of a gun. And then, of course, it tips off his fingers, go over his head. Love the guy, but that was a stupid move. But yes, the offense can continue to thrive as long as the defense does its job. The organized chaos, we'll call it, of having those players that can be so versatile in playing different positions, different roles on any given play. Big help for the offense going forward. The offensive line last week gave up 2 sacks, so that's better than the week before. That's a good number. The fewer times Darnold gets hit, the better. Obviously, we don't want him getting hurt. We don't want anybody getting hurt. And I think it's going to be another week where the Vikings offensive line, who they all played the whole game again, they're all healthy, they're all working together. Love to see it. Love that camaraderie on the offensive line. And of course, I mentioned last week, we hadn't heard Brian O'Neill's name all year, and then he gets called for a penalty last week. Well, it happens. Everybody does sometimes. But as long as they stay on pace, lock it down, holding it off, They should be able to keep Darnold from going ass over tit. And that's all we need him to do. And obviously, open up holes for the run game. Sam Darnold. Kudos to the man. NFC Offensive Player of the month of September. Well deserved. 11 touchdown passes in the first month of the season. Leading the league in touchdown passes. He was 20 for 28 last week, 275 yards, 3 touchdown passes last week. Just that first half was awesome. And he was, aside from that interception in the second half, he was pretty solid in the second half too. It was that one hit where the ball came loose. And Packers recovered it. It happens. But he has looked absolutely on point. He's doing everything he needs to do. He's running the offense, leading those guys. Offensive Player of the month. Come on. Give that man a round. Give that man a cheers. Running backs. Aaron Jones, another good day at the office. 93 yards on 22 carries, 4 more catches, 46 yards. Did not score a touchdown. Tried to get him in there. It would have been nice to see him attempt the Lambeau leap during the game. He did get to do it afterwards, which was fun to watch. All those Viking fans crowding around, and I enjoyed. I think I watched that video like 5 times in a row just because it felt good, and not so much of him, spitting in the face. It wasn't about him spitting in Lambeau's face. It's about him coming home to a place where he's played his whole career up until this year, having a good day, getting the win, and just one more time for old time's sake, hop up there, do the Lambeau leap like he's done a dozen times in the past. Love to see it. Chandler, very mitigated role, 3 carries, 5 yards, 1 catch for 8. He didn't need to do much. I mean, obviously, we needed to pass a little more in the second half than we probably normally would have in that kind of situation, which, you got to move the ball down. You got to keep the other team from having short fields. And Chandler just, didn't get his name called as much. Wide receivers, Justin Jefferson, another great day. 8 targets, 6 catches, 85 yards and a score. That, by the way, that touchdown score he had, that was the window he had that Darnold had to put that ball into was probably a little smaller than my head. That's how much space he had to make that pass. And he put it in there beautifully where JJ just kind of reached it with the one hand while the other one was underneath him, just caught it one-handed. It is beautiful. You can make a poster of like every other catch Justin Jefferson makes and put it up on some kid's wall or some guy's wall or whoever. It's like the NFL version of posterizing, where you make a catch in a weird way that just is special and one-handed, and that little window, that little hole that Darnold had to throw it into. I could say that over and over again, but great job by Darnold and Jefferson on that play. Addison came back last week, 2 touchdowns, 1 on the ground, 1 through the air, 3 catches for 72 yards. He's back, baby. Right back in there. Jordan Addison. Jalen Naylor got limited to the 1 reception, but it was a 31-yard catch. He did have that muff punt. I think it was more of an attempt to just, he's been good. We need to keep trying to get the ball into his hands from time to time. But I don't think they're going to do that again. It's going to, it'll just go back to, Powell and Gaskin doing the returns from here on out, I'm sure. Tight ends. Josh Oliver had his first touchdown of the year. 68% of the snaps. Munt had 60%. They played a little more 12 personnel, 2 tight ends. It wasn't 38, but it was more than 30. It was like 40. I can't remember. It was a lot of 2 tight end sets out there. No, I think it was like 38, 39, somewhere around there. So just under 40%. But that's a lot because I don't think they haven't played like more than 5% of the snaps with 2 tight ends up until this point. But again, kind of a product of how the game was going and the rush that the Packers were putting on Darnold. They occasionally needed a little help. Special teams, Reichert, 4 for 4 at PATs. Hit his 1 field goal. Solid. Awesome. Good. It's all we need. Wright, 5 punts, 45 yards a punt. Had a rare touchback in there. Just, ball bounces sometimes. Can't get down. The coverage can't get down fast enough. It just happens. No punter is going to hit every single one right between in the red zone there. Gaskin did have that one kick return for 26 yards, which was a nice one. So we know if he can get 26 yards on a return every time, I'd be fine with it. It's not technically ideal because if he just let it bounce or through the end zone or down it in the end zone and get it to the 30, but at least we know that the Vikings are willing to move it out of there, take a chance on those kickoff returns every once in a while, especially when their kicking game for the Packers was, let's say, not good. When that kid Haverson, I can't remember. I'm sorry, I forget. It's something like that. I missed those 2 field goals, which were clutch to the results of the game because, had he made one of those field goals and the rest of the game doesn't change, that's unfortunately an L. But he didn't, and you can't really predict what would happen had he made even one of those. But yeah, so that's breaking down how the Vikings did last week. Let's talk into this week as we fly over the pond and head into London for a matchup with the Jets. The Jets are 2-2 on the season. Just lost to Denver 10-9 last week. That tells you a lot about how the Jets are working this year. Their defense is solid, very solid. Their offense, not so much. Granted, yeah, you could say Denver has a really good defense this year too, which they do. But I think also it's a fact that the offensive line for the Jets is still a work in progress. The wide receivers, I mean, we'll get into the players in a minute. Let's finish. So the Jets defense last week, no sacks, only hit the quarterback twice, no interceptions, no sacks. It was just, yeah. And they were playing against a rookie. It's just, it looks good for Minnesota. I'm just gonna, maybe I'm preluding to how my predictions are going to come up at the end of this, but Rodgers, yeah, let's get into the players. Aaron Rodgers. The majority of people watching this video absolutely hate him. I understand. My wife says some pretty awful things about Aaron Rodgers when there's not an open mic or camera around somewhere. He's coming. He's going to see the Vikings again this weekend. And I'm sure he does not have a lot of fond memories of that. I mean, we all know that one wonderfully memed photo of him laying on the ground with his helmet half off his face and a look on his face of like, what have I gotten myself into? I don't want to be here anymore. He's going to have that look on his face this weekend. More than once. He threw 42 passes, connected 24 of them for 225 yards last week. No touchdowns. He got sacked 5 times. At least 5. Yeah, it was 5 times. 5 times he got sacked. He's not the same Aaron Rodgers. He's not going to be. All the darkness retreats and trips to Egypt and kombucha or kimchi or whatever those things that the kids and the trendy people do ain't gonna do nothing. I'm sorry. It's gonna sure you can stay on the field. You can play another year or so. It's not looking good. I feel sorry for the Jets fans who put a lot into that, but it's not working out. Jets are a middle-of-the-road team in the NFL. They might squeak into the playoffs at the end of the year, but it's not because of Aaron Rodgers. It's probably in spite of Aaron Rodgers that it happens. Breece Hall, big-time running back for the Jets. Ran for over 50 yards in the first 3 games of the season. Ran for 4 yards on 10 carries last week. Again, against that defense of the Broncos, which is legit. It's just as tough as ours. But Breece Hall is also a passing threat. He had 4 receptions or more. I think 4, 5, and 7 receptions in the first 3 games. Probably not in that order, but he's definitely. I mean, It's where he makes his money. He's kind of like a younger Christian McCaffrey on a less well-run offense. We'll say that. Braden Allen, another running back. He's a rookie over there. He's looked good in the last couple of weeks, getting more touches. 8 for 34 last week on the ground. It's a nice 1-2 punch. So it's just another aspect of the offense that the Vikings are going to need to focus on because it's probably their strongest part. Breece Hall and Braylon Allen. Garrett Wilson, touted wide receiver, former first-round pick. Had the whole world ahead of him. He was going to be a great wide receiver. I believed it too, but I'm not believing it so much anymore. I think he's a good wide receiver. I think he might be at his peak where we could get 1,000 yards out of him. We can get a handful of touchdowns over the course of a season, but I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm saying the Jets could make a move in the next couple of weeks. We've all heard some rumors about a possible former Packer wide receiver maybe making his way back into the eyes of Aaron Rodgers. And yeah, it's Devontae Adams. It's possible. It's one of a handful of teams. And that could totally throw a wrench and change the entire offense just having him there. But right now, he's not. So we're not going to worry about it any further than that. Wilson, 8 targets, 5 catches, 41 yards. Lazard had 5 catches for 58 yards on 8 targets. Tyler Conklin, former Viking, tight end now for the Jets, 8 targets, 4 catches, 17 yards. Just all those numbers, those 8 targets, 8 targets, 8 targets. Rodgers has the ball to spread around. He's got plenty of people to throw to. Mike Williams, 5 targets, 4 catches, 67 yards last week. And those yardage totals, you got Williams had 67. You had Lazard with 58 on 5 catches. Lazard is the biggest end zone threat for the Packers or for the Jets. And I think he showed that before last week. He was leading the team. I think he had 5 red zone targets in the previous 2 games combined. So he's definitely Aaron's favorite, in my opinion. Not the most skilled, but just the fact that you got guys like Lazard and Wilson and Williams that can each, turn a play, break a play into something huge. But I think that our secondary is going to be able to temper that offensive steal strategy and keep anything big from breaking. So overall, the offense, I think the running game is where the Vikings need to worry about the most because they can do the passing, the screens, short range stuff around the ends. If one of them gets loose on the outside, they both got Braylon Allen and Breece Hall both have the ability to make moves, to extend a play, to break something open. The defensive side for the Jets, Sauce Gardner could make it an interesting and challenging day for Justin Jefferson. I'm not suggesting he's going to blanket cover him, but I'm sure the majority of the time that they're both on the field, you'll have Gardner over JJ. Could make it hard. And then they've got DJ Reed out there too, who is also an excellent coverage player. Could supplement on the other side, so it might be a tougher day for Addison too. Again, the ground game is where the Vikings are going to need to try and excel. They're also going to need to protect against a couple of guys. Will McDonald for the Jets has got 5 sacks on the year. He's got 8 quarterback hits on the year. He's doing really good so far. Another guy I think that the Vikings need to account for, Jermaine Johnson. Hasn't blown up anything yet this year, but he was a Pro Bowler last year when he had 5 sacks. He's also 7.5 sacks. Sorry, he had 7.5 sacks last year. He's also an Eden Prairie native, so yay! I mean, good. Rooting for you, buddy, over there. Just don't do too good against our Vikings, please. So yeah, those are just a couple of defensive players I wanted to touch on that we should keep an eye out for. That we should hope that the Vikings have schemed something good to keep them off of our backs. So let's get into it. The spread and the over-under and the totals. If you're a betting person like I would like to be, Minnesota is currently favored by 2.5 points. I'm taking that. I'm taking the money. I'm taking the spread there. I'm taking the money line on the Vikings if I could. The over-under, 40.5 points. I'm taking the under on that one. I'm not expecting either team to hit 20 points on Sunday. And I think it'll be, I don't know, let's say it's 17-9. Maybe the Jets never even get into the end zone. They just get close a few times, kick a few field goals. That would be good for fantasy. Go pick up Greg Zuerlein if you need a kicker. But yeah, the Vikings, I could see them scoring a couple touchdowns, maybe a couple field goals. I like I said, I don't project either team to hit 20 points, or definitely not to go over that. So I'm taking definitely the under. That feels like the safest bet on the game for me. Well, no, actually, I would, if I was a betting person, or if I could bet, and if I would bet on my own team, I would take the same game parlay on that. I would take the Vikings. I would take them. I would take them winning outright, winning by more than 2.5 points, and I would take the under. Put $5 on that, win a little bit of money, huh? But yeah, I can see the Vikings. I'm just saying, it's going to be good for the Vikings. I think it's going to be easy peasy, as they put it over in London. Anytime touchdown bet, Aaron Jones, all day long. He's getting in the end zone, either on the ground or through the air, one way or the other. It's happening. Fantasy players for the upcoming week. Obviously, JJ start, Jones start, Addison, you got to start. Vikings defense, you got to start. Breece Hall, you got to start. If you've got Garrett Wilson on your team, you probably have to start him, even though it's probably not going to be great. I could see him getting a similar line to last week where he had, 5 catches. I could see him. Yeah, I'm saying 4 or 5 catches, maybe 6. I wouldn't say he gets more than 70 yards, and I'm not saying he gets into the end zone. So it'll be a fine week, but for a guy like Garrett Wilson that you would have spent high draft capital on in the draft, it's not going to look good. But again, you probably have to start him. Dart throws. Darnold, if you got him, go with him one more time. I know in the couple leagues I have him in, I am not starting him. I have other options that I'm going with. It doesn't look really beneficial for the offense on the other side, but you absolutely could start him. You might get lucky. He could throw for 220 yards and a score, and it's a fine day. You're right around that top 12 quarterback range, maybe just outside. But Reichard, throw him out there again as kicker. On the Jets side of the ball, Rodgers, I don't like it. Conklin, if you need a tight end, not a bad option. Probably gets 4 or 5 catches. Probably turns it into 40 yards. That's the way the tight ends have been going in fantasy. That's a pretty solid fantasy line. Lazard, I mean, just the fact that he gets the end zone looks. If the Jets get that close, I keep saying Packers because there's so many more Packers on this team. Anywho, Lazard, just because he gets those end zone looks, he could luck into a touchdown if they get close enough. Mike Williams, another deep guy. Again, maybe he breaks one. He's got speed, he's got size. As long as he catches the ball and doesn't immediately flop on the ground, he could score a touchdown. I don't like it, but if you really need help at wide receiver, those are a couple options. Braylon Allen, he could definitely do enough to, in a desperation situation, get you some points there. And if you're in a defense where you get bonus points for keeping another team from scoring a lot, you could get away with doing the Jets defense. And like I said again, Zuerlein is a good kicker to pick up and start if you're streaming kickers there. So that's all I got to say. Thanks again for coming in. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate it. Again, you can find me on Twitter at FFRabbitDad. Fantasy content, Guillotine League content mainly is what I put out there. Vikings, gotta support the purple. It's all about purple in this household. So yeah, that's how we're going into this. We got the London game, and then we don't see the Vikings play for another fortnight because they'll have the bye next week. So thank you again for coming in. Until next time, I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. Skol Vikings, let's make it 5-0. Let's go, baby.
Write it, Joel, write it.